What's up, guys? I'm Laura from Reading in Bed, and this is going to be a bit of a discussion video, somewhat about this book, Schadenfreude, A Love Story by Rebecca Schuman, and more broadly about reading memoirs in the time of being extremely online, and what that means and how it sort of changes the experience we have as readers. So this book, Schadenfreude, I'll just refer to it that way, is a memoir, and well, I later learned that it is kind of a bunch of articles and essays taken from other places and kind of adapted. It doesn't feel that way. It feels quite cohesive. It has a very straightforward kind of a timeline, and it kind of flows nicely because she uses these compound German words to title each of the sections. So in addition to like Schadenfreude, which is the one most of us know, like the first chapter here is called Jugendsünde. I didn't look up the pronunciation on that one, but it means teenage folly from youth and sin. And each of the chapters has something like that that ties into the subject matter. The memoir itself is about her experience learning German and experiencing German culture, and then kind of morphs into more of her like attempting to be part of academia. Like she gets a PhD in German lit. So there's sort of two halves to the story, but it all has to do with Kafka and German and all of that. So it all kind of works well together. Now, now this being a memoir written by someone who's kind of in their early 40s, who makes their living writing for various online publications, and importantly has kept a personal blog since like 2003, when you read a memoir like that, it's very tempting, at least for me, to sort of, verify some stuff, let's say, look up extra information. And it started all quite innocently because she talks about one of her ex-boyfriends in here who was like a quasi-famous kind of D-list actor. So that it started there where I was just like, well, I'm going to figure out who this guy is. And she actually, like, she never uses a pseudonym for him or anything, but she refers to his best known movie as Four Dipshits Go Abroad. And given the timeline, it's obviously Eurotrip. Even though I've never seen Eurotrip, I knew it was right away. So from there, it was very easy. Like I'd say it took me less than 2 minutes to figure out who this guy was, and even to find a picture of them together at the premiere of this movie in LA. So, that was innocent enough. It was just sort of curiosity. But from there, yeah, that's where I sort of learned that she had kept this personal blog. It looks like she shuttered it, but she now has some other websites going on. So if you wanted to, and I didn't do a lot of this, but you certainly could, while you're reading this book, you could easily, figure out kind of the general timeline and go read some of her personal blog posts from the time she's writing about here. So I did like, just to see, I did a little bit of that. And yeah, I mean, in her personal blog, she is also very obsessed with Kafka, and, so there was nothing really like super revelatory, but, so that's just another example of sort of the weirdness of like reading memoir and writing memoir when there's also like so many other sources of information. But where it started to get a little weird and maybe a little problematic for me was when in the book, it takes a turn towards being less about her experiencing German language and culture and more about her getting her PhD in German and trying to get a tenure-track job in academia. Now, in the book, she does mention that once she sort of gave up because she was not successful in getting that tenure job, I mean, there's like so few of them, it's almost impossible. She wrote an article about it. I think it was called something like Thesis Hatement. It's the first thing that comes up when you Google her name. And just to sort of preface this, none of the searching I did was like a beautiful mind style, drawing weird connections and pictures up on boards or 100 tabs open or anything like that. This was all like kind of first page search results we're talking here. So that said, very easy to find the article that she references in here, and she does sort of talk about how it got a lot of attention, it kind of went viral-ish, but she doesn't really get too much into the reaction to it or the backlash, and it seems like there certainly was some of that. So this is where, you know, I got curious about that too. And I even knew kind of when I started searching in this vein, it's like, I probably shouldn't. This is really none of my business. And I'm probably not going to like what I'm going to find. So what I found was, like I said, I found the article itself. I actually didn't read it because, you know, like, what do I care about the ins and outs of, you know, literature PhDs trying to get jobs. But what I found very quickly was another blog that had linked to this article, as well as several others. And the blog post that this guy wrote was not about her. It was about a general trend he was seeing in people being very critical of, you know, academia, and he linked to her article as one example of many of that. He also misspelled her name. Okay, so if you look at Schuman here on the cover, you might think, like, that doesn't seem to have enough letters. That's kind of how I felt too. And, you know, coming from me, I also have a vaguely Germanic, seemingly simple last name, which is constantly mispronounced and misspelled. So I get it. But she went off on this guy, okay, in the comments. I mean, she was not pleased about being involved, you know, as part of this conversation. But she kind of went more off on the fact that he spelled her name wrong, and was like saying how this is like disrespecting my entire identity and stuff. And again, as someone who, you know, gets called Laura Frey on, you know, a near daily basis, like at some point you got to let that shit go. I mean, I've only been dealing with it for 10 years because it's my husband's name. Presumably she's been dealing with it her whole life. And I get that it sucks and it's annoying, but like, like, she went off. This was multiple comments, you know, sniping back at people and over what was essentially a typo, and one that was almost certainly not on purpose, and which the author of the blog post apologized for pretty much immediately. And it was just like, you know, I was reading this and be like, what on earth is going on? So, so that was a thing. And I was like, okay. And then in some further Googling, this is sort of unrelated. And, you know, this all went down, this stuff around this article, in 2014. Now, I was starting to look more at sort of reviews of this book, because that's something I always do, memoir or not. And I found an article that Rebecca Schuman wrote for LitHub. Now, the article was from 2017. This whole blog post comment section debacle was from 2014. So there's 3 years separating them. But from my perspective, as someone who's just kind of trolling for dirt and stuff, they were 5 minutes and a few clicks apart. So, you know, you can see how this is starting to like form a certain impression for me from her going off on, you know, what was essentially a typo. In this article for LitHub, she goes off on a Goodreads reviewer who calls her out for an error that she made, which was a factual error to do with two of the German philosophers she was discussing. The error itself was clearly just a brain fart. You know, it wasn't anything to do with her level of knowledge or anything. It was clearly one of those things, one of those mistakes that everyone makes. She didn't see it. Her editor didn't see it. It happens. It'll be fixed in the paperback edition. But this Goodreads commenter called it out. He wasn't, well, you know, I mean, he was a little scathing, let's say, okay, but not terrible. He did not come out and say, like, you know, this person's an idiot or anything like that. But he was sort of like taken aback by this egregious error, and whatever. And so she then goes off in this article in LitHub, and I mean goes off, and, you know, draws a line from this Goodreads review calling out this error to, you know, oh, I'm being called out for this because I'm a woman, because I'm older, because I'm unfuckable, which to me is like a giant leap. I mean, and it's kind of ironic because actually, to me, calling out that kind of stuff in a Goodreads review probably has very little to do with your, you know, age or gender or anything, and it has a lot more to do with Schadenfreude. You know, as a reader, when you catch an author, like a published author, in a mistake like that, you are experiencing Schadenfreude, okay? And that's where it's coming from, and she seems to not be able to grasp this, which is just bizarre. Leave aside the fact that authors going off on Goodreads reviews is just such a bad look. She even acknowledges it in the article, like she knows that she shouldn't be reading them or reacting to them, but then she does anyway. It's like go off, write your whatever, but like send it to a friend or your editor or someone. Like, to publish that is just, to me, beyond it's almost unhinged. Like, Goodreads reviews in particular, and I would say reviews in general, but certainly Goodreads reviews are for readers. They are not for authors. I am pretty certain that this guy who wrote this comment wasn't expecting you to read or react to it. And her making it about her gender and her age and stuff, of course I went over to Goodreads, and there are many, uncomplimentary reviews written by women. She, cherry-picked 2 from men, and it's like, and I'm not saying this stuff isn't real, that sexism isn't real, that women who, have a PhD in German literature don't get, mansplained. But, I mean, I don't think that's what this was. And the overuse of that kind of argument just waters down the real instances of sexism and mansplaining and what have you. So it's just all, to me, like, very cringy, very annoying, very unattractive. And had I, seen or known of this stuff before going into this book, I probably wouldn't have read it. And I really like this book. I'm glad that I read it. But now I'm like, oh God, I kind of wish I hadn't gone down this road. I kind of wish I hadn't even looked up her D-list boyfriend, because, like, really, who fucking cares? I wouldn't say it ruined my reading experience, but it certainly had an effect on it, and not a good one. I would still say I think this is a good book and I would recommend it, but now I'm just like, I'm left with this bad taste in my mouth and I don't really know what to do with that. So I guess the point of this video is just, like, first of all, to see if anyone else is out here doing this, Googling things and reading Goodreads reviews and comment sections and stuff, and sort of like fact-checking memoirs. And is this, am I just a crazy person? Should I just give myself, a little talking to, which I guess I'm doing by making this video? Or, is this a normal and legit thing to do? I don't know. I would love to hear from other people who may or may not do this kind of thing, whether you're reading memoir, novel, what have you. And particularly these days, like, when most writers who are, writing currently sort of have to have an online presence, and, they're going to end up doing something stupid. And I would say in Rebecca Schuman's case, these were 2 examples of just, like, utter stupidity that I was like really taken aback, because I found the book to be very smart and funny, and I still do. Like I said, this is not any kind of attack on the book. I thought it was very, very funny. If you, like kind of Dave Barry style humor, but with a lot more swearing and drinking and drugs and sex, then you should read this. And just for the 90s nostalgia alone, it was great. But yeah, I'm just left feeling, I don't know, confused, dirty. So yeah, tell me what you think. Tell me if you've done this. Tell me if I should, just remove myself from this online conversation when it comes to reading memoirs in the future. Thanks for listening.